SMUG people, hello. It's another month, yet another. They just keep trucking by, don't they, Adam?
Yeah, I was getting my
November.
hair cut last night, and we both I don't know, part of me feels like we're still in 2020 and we're about to be in 2023. It's like the last couple of years have just flown by. So
Yeah, evaporated. We were doing ratios with my kids, seeing what that 3 years really meant for me compared to, let's say my 10-year-old,
right.
30% of his life. So
That's
what are we
sort of
talking about
the
today?
Oh well, yeah. What are we talking about? We've got a lot to talk about.
Yes, we better get to it.
I'm gonna rely on Asher and Justin and everyone else to kind of monitor the chat because I don't see that for some reason. So you guys let me know if something comes up. Yeah, we've got a lot of notes about releases and such. Wanted to start with kind of just an update on the performance improvements and things that we've been working on the last couple of months. The data that we're seeing and feedback that we've gotten indicates that the performance issues are back to kind of what all of you guys expect. There are still some occasional hiccups which we are working on. Honestly, some of that's been going on this week, and we'll be continuing doing it over the next couple of weeks as well. It'll be tied to our next update, and so those will just kind of be trickling out over the next few weeks as well. If you are still having issues, intermittent or otherwise, make sure you reach out maybe through SMUG, ping Joe directly if you talk to him, or our support channels, call, email, etc. And just mention something about performance issues. You can point them to, hey, they talked about this on the Ask Live, and we'll get more details that way. So as far as releases go, on Wednesday we released on Tuesday we released the 667 release. It was actually ready to go a little bit ahead of that, but we wanted to coordinate with one of our partners to kind of have a big kind of push for the start of November. So that went out. There's a new homepage for if any of our enhanced users are listening. There's a new homepage for you guys. Feel free to explore and reach out to your support network if you have questions. We also added the sales rep field to the account grid. This has actually been asked for a little while. Kind of got lost in the backlog a little bit. But for those of you who attach a sales rep when a lead or an account comes into the system and you want to attach it that way, you can now actually look that up on the account grid. And I thought it might be a good opportunity to just kind of show how that's done, just in case anyone isn't 100% sure. So I'm just going to share my screen here really, really fast and dive in here. Anytime you're on a grid, and so when we talk about grid on this Ask Live, what we mean is this view right here, where there's a column and row grid style, right? When you're looking at your lists, and in each of these sections, there is a little hamburger menu over here. It's what they call this little 3-line menu, and that gives you the option to do a couple of things. One is you can export to a CSV file if you want to do further things, some really cool filtering and things like that, though some of those filters do exist here, right? You can filter on each of the columns and sort and so forth. You can restore back to defaults. If you completely blow up everything, you want to just get it back to the default, you can do that. But you can also toggle these advanced options on, and those advanced options are these filtering capabilities that I just pointed out, and also this columns section. So if I click this, you can choose to show a bunch of different data points in any of these views. You can actually create custom views too, but that's a whole other thing. So I can come into this view and I say, hey, I really need to know, the sales rep. So I can come in here, I can either search for it, sales rep, boom, it comes up right there. And I can add it, or I can just kind of go through the list here, right? And I can look at all the things that this is tied to. And each of these little subcategories indicates, where it's stored in the database. So is it tied to the account record? Is it tied to the site? Is it tied to one of their profile records? Is it tied to an order, looking at their invoice information and so forth? So helps you get a better understanding there too. But most importantly, like I said, you can add that field in there, and now it shows in here. And so any account that has a sales rep on it can show here, and you can filter and create views and so forth based on that. So you have any questions, we have a help article on this. I should have given it to Asher ahead of time, but I will make sure we have a link for you guys. And you can also always reach out to support if you have questions. So back to our smiling faces here.
Our grids are so good.
They really
They're
are
so good. And our users, I don't think maybe 10% of our users really flex that muscle.
It's one of my favorite features. You know that
So good.
I'm a data guy. Like when we went through these changes for the 6.5, I was like a kid in a candy store, kind of going through some of the grid changes we did and the improvements to that. And
my favorite part is we created a fork in the road where we said, if you like simple, here you go. That's it. End of story. Because people are getting lost when we try to do a hybrid, which means that when we give you a little bit of power, if we hide it behind simplicity, it means we can give smart people more power. and we can break things up in ways that makes it so. If you're not utilizing the power of the grid to look at your data, you're missing out. There's some of those columns that are just so cool.
Absolutely.
And like Adam said, you can create different views so you don't have to wreck what you use day to day. You can create an exploratory view and just play with it.
Yeah. And I should just do this just so we don't cause any confusion. When we talk about views, by the way, guys, what we mean are we have default views, right? So when you come into like an account grid, for example, there's all accounts. Active accounts is the default one. You can look up if there's accounts that have a past due balance. You can look up accounts based on, what are their, do they have any email data or mail data? Like, are they marketable, so to speak? Are they commercial? The order section has even more. In fact, I'm going to show it because the order list is my favorite. There is a lot of data you can do on the order section, and we've kind of customized it based on the colors of the estimates, invoices, work orders, so forth. It's broken down like this to kind of help you guys figure out what might be most actionable for you. But each of these is a view. And so you can see here, I've made some custom ones up at the top, and that's what we're talking about. Is you can basically just say, hey, I want to look at this custom view that I made. And it basically is just like a little custom report that you've built that shows what the columns and the other data that you want to see there. So really cool feature. Yeah, we're always giddy about that to talk about. So hopefully that's useful for you guys. What else we have tied to this? We have a fix. We have a ton of fixes, actually. Just recommend you guys go look at the release notes, because like I was telling Joe yesterday when we were planning for this, like, I mean, I could go over half of them, but we had about 20 or 25 little fixes or small tweaks to things. And so it's usually just best to digest that kind of as a list in our release notes. So just check out the what's new. So from the user dropdown, just check out the what's new, or look at that cool little marketing what's new dashboard on the home version 2.0 and jump over to that on our help site.
Have we updated the what's new for the?
We have. Yep.
Good. I should probably take a look at it. But here's what I know. Since Tuesday it's released, nobody said anything. So I know it went well.
It's usually positive. Yeah.
That's very positive. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, the unscheduled approved orders list was the one I did want to mention. We've had some users who've been struggling with that. The list wasn't showing the results that was expected. So basically the purpose of this view is that you have an approved order that has not yet been scheduled to complete. So that's sort of the action that we're looking at. It was pulling in data based on the wrong appointments and some other little things. And so that took a few rounds of QA. It was a fun one to watch the conversation go between me and Aaron, who was the dev involved with that, and the QA team. But we did get that resolved, and that is updated. So that's a big one I wanted to point out. There are also two things that were tied to this that weren't necessarily for the release itself, but there were some parts of the release that we were sort of holding off on to show this. And those are a couple of new reports. And I'm going to take a moment here to kind of talk about a feature that these involve and why it's useful. So the reports are tied around your campaign results. We have a new report called the Campaign Results Lifetime ROI, which you guys can see right here. And then we made an update to the campaign results page overall. And I will show you both of these here in a second. But I want to show the marketing section first. We actually showcased this 5 or 6 months ago when the big change first went out. And that's tracking your marketing expenses. So if you want to think of it as your marketing spend, marketing expense, just any marketing transaction cost associated with your marketing overall, you can add those into ServiceMonster, and it's going to make your other reports and dashboards be much more meaningful to you. And we made it a lot easier to do so. This feature used to be a little bit buried, and we made it much more simple to kind of get to the lead source and the campaign and to add those expenses. So if you could just come to the marketing section here, you don't even have to dig for it. You can just come right in here to the marketing expense. It's going to give you all of your active campaigns, and you can just search. I'm just going to do Google here because it's an easy one that I was just playing with right before here. And I've got this Google Ads campaign that I can click into. And then you're just right in here. You're able to say, hey, what date was this? I'll say November 1st. You know, it was a $50 cost. These other fields are optional. It's additional data if you want. If you're doing a direct campaign and you want to, hey, this is an audience size of 500, you can track that, right? If you want to have, a conversion target of, hey, I expect to have at least 5 invoices that come out of this, you can track that. They are not mandatory. You do not have to fill any of these out. Same with the note, right? So that's all there. Hit OK, boom, that's added to it. Now, if you were searching into the campaigns themselves, if I just go into the lead sources here, for example, and again, search for Google, and I dive into the item here. First off, you can see over here in the campaign results that it has that cost, the $100. If I go into the history here, there are two $50 charges on this day. And that's going to start tracking your ROI over time. So it's going to look at the revenue that's been brought in and then the cost associated with that. And then it's going to track the ROI. You can also see here, I can do the same thing with that marketing expense, right? I don't have to look it up. It knows what the campaign is. I can just add an expense right there. You guys who were savvy might have also noticed we also added it here. It's the same idea, basically just making this simple, just doing that quick search, being able to add it in just as we were on the main page. So that's really kind of the concept we're talking about here. Try to make it much easier for users to actually complete this data. There are some changes we still want to do in the future, maybe have recurring charges and things like that. But really, actually, you guys to be aware of this feature and utilizing it, because it's going to make, like I said, the reports and dashboards much, much, much more meaningful. So speaking of those reports, why are we going into this? Well, the campaign results report was updated with a filter here on the side that lets you filter not just a range of the results themselves of the campaigns that are being run, but by a range of the marketing expense. So that you can basically pull this now to look at a specific, like, hey, I want to look at anything that has a marketing expense between October or this quarter or this year or whatever, and it'll pull that data instead. And the other one that we brought in because of this change and sort of the conversation behind it was this lifetime ROI. So the campaign results report lets you see how successful a campaign is in a certain time period, right? Because you might be running campaigns at different times. The lifetime ROI lets you just do a really kind of high level glance, like how have your campaigns been over time, right? You need to take this data at arm's length, right, and basically dive into it and get further data. But this is just a quick bird's eye view. Hey, how successful have the campaigns been over time? You can see that if there's no expense tracked, it's not going to calculate an ROI, right? It's just, you can't have an ROI if there's zero expense, right? There's no investment there. But you can track these over time and hopefully make more meaningful decisions based off of that. So hope that is useful.
And just to jump in for one addition to this, because everybody talks about consolidating your knowledge of lead sources, making sure you know where your marketing dollars are being spent, and not just what's bringing in leads, but what's bringing in dollars. That's less important for a service-based company that's running residential properties than it is for, let's say, a digital company like ServiceMonster. But I think it's still very important to have a complete understanding of not only what's bringing in new clients, but what's attracting repeat business.
Yep.
And so ServiceMonster does that extremely well as well. And these are the types of features that I feel like some of our power users know and love, and it's one of the reasons why they understand ServiceMonster is a little different. It's not just a record keeping system for your scheduling. But man, there's a lot of people who don't. There's a lot of people who don't like understand what that power really brings to them as far as decision making and, you know, where you're going to spend your, especially since now marketing has gotten so complex, because you have all the old stuff, and then you throw on top all of the digital stuff, and you start talking, you know, SEO and attribution and, you know, these words that are floating around the digital space that have to do with tracking where your lead. ServiceMonster can do all this in addition to the lead source that you can drop in from the web forms to drop in and track all of this as well. If you can get that hookup so that you can construct a proper URL, and so on and so on and so on. But it's totally capable of tracking at that level. And then essentially what you get is for your marketing dollars, not just clicks and views. And, you know, that's all nice. That tells you about Loft, and, you know, that tells you about engagement. That's the world of SEO, or that's the world of social media. That's the world of, you know, influencers. You're trying to turn that into dollars, right? So it's nice. All those, you can see those there. That's great. Clicks and views. Where's the lead? Where's the actionable sales opportunity? How many of them close? What does that pipeline look like? Because you can pay for engagement all day long, but if it doesn't equate to jobs and you're spending your marketing dollars incorrectly, and sometimes it's the expensive leads that convert. I'll say that again. Sometimes it's the expensive leads that convert. And so where are you going to throw your dollars at? You can track it, and that part of your key performance indicators, part of your monthly and quarterly review of what your marketing is doing for you, which now we have him doing that kind of stuff for us, which is fabulous. That's really important, and ServiceMonster can help get you there. And Adam's continually making that side of the world better too, even though a lot of you guys don't use it all that much. So again,
that's really what we're trying to change.
Yeah. So we do, absolutely, because it's a number one complaint we have, followed by, I wish I would have started using ServiceMonster sooner. The number one complaint is, I don't feel like I'm using it. Like it's got so much horsepower and I'm just not utilizing it. This is one of those areas that's totally worth your time.
Yeah, I think this really brings up an interesting conversation that we probably shouldn't dive too much in. In fact, there's actually a recent blog post that Joe put out that talks about just this: what an owner of a service business needs to have as a skill set in 2022 compared to 1990 is vastly different, right? And whether you've grown to the point where you have a marketing team versus you doing it yourself, you know, there's a lot to be aware of, and it can be kind of daunting. And so that blog post kind of covers that. And so Asher, I highly recommend you post that, even though we talked about it last month. I think it's a nice little segue into that. So yeah, that's 6.6.7. Like I said, take a look at those release notes. We've got more coming down the pipe. We're going to be pumping out a couple of quick releases, 2 to 3 week cycles over the next month and a half. So more is coming very soon. Speaking of more is coming, I want to take a minute to talk about the 2 big releases that are going on. And I hate talking about this, but I'm going to fall in sort of a little bit here, be transparent with you guys, because that's, I think, the right thing to do. The 6.7 release, the FMS release that we talked about on the webinar, it truly is close. I know you guys are sick of hearing it. I'm sick of saying it. I'm sick of hearing it myself. We had to do a pretty major rework when we got to the QA part with our FMS department. There were a couple of changes that needed to be made in how we were batching the cards. And so there was some changes there. But that also kind of opened up a can of worms where the process we had, if we were creating these default campaigns, which you guys know is our 8-step, right? The default 8-step program. It wasn't going to work at scale and allow us to edit the way that we needed to, because that has to be refreshed over time. You guys, I hope, know your marketing content needs to be updated over time. And so we make changes to that all the time. And so we had to rework that, and it bumped us back a few weeks. And so that's being completed. And really, it gives us a way to scale this over time and properly solve those hurdles. So it's in the testing phase. We will have some more accurate information here in the coming weeks as far as a release date. And I'll be excited to work with the marketing team to finally start prepping you guys for that release. On mobile, a similar thing happened for different reasons. And I mentioned to Joe, like, again, I just want to be transparent about this, but I don't know how much you guys care about the technicalities behind it. But prior to the webinar, what you guys know is the mobile app and the changes we made to the mobile app and the SM Lite product and everything that's tied to that were separated in the sense that when we built that to test, we were hard coding it to say, hey, this is SM Lite, or hey, this is the standard mobile app. The way that it was built allows them to be merged. They live in the same environment and all that. But when we did the merge and sort of got into the testing phase of, hey, we had half of our team looking at the full version of the app and half of our team looking at the light version of the app. And there were problems in both, but especially on the full version of the app, a lot of the changes that were made had created some issues that weren't visible to us before then. So it basically put a pretty massive list of things to fix in that QA process. And that's what we're going through right now. And we are churning through that. We've gotten from the original spot, we're about 65% of the way through. And our poor dev, who's primarily working on this, has also been dealing with some illness issues. So that's kind of what's been going on. We are still churning through that. It is a massive priority for our team. And we hope to have another positive update for you guys shortly. So that's kind of where both of those are at. Again, if you're curious of what's coming with the UI overhaul, email editor changes, a host of other things, the webinar showcases that. So if you guys haven't seen that and you're curious, you can take a look and kind of get excited for that when it's about to come out. So, oh my goodness, do not like talking about that stuff. Excited to get more positive value adds for you guys. That's really the big goal. Want to close out the year strong and definitely want to start 2023 strong. So that's kind of where we're at. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a new blog post. So before I kind of dive into SMUG posts and things like that, I wanted to get someone on the marketing team, Asher or Kim, if you guys want to hop on here. Let's talk. There's some content that we want to make sure you guys are aware of on the blog. So let's take a minute and chat about that. One of us will hop on any minute. There we go. There we go.
Awesome. We have been posting a lot more on our blog. It's one of our new goals to just keep turning out content there. So we're doing our best to post every week. We've been posting weekly for the last month. Adam mentioned Joe's blog earlier on this live, but we have some other stuff over there as well. We have a great profile on Spot Out, a really long time ServiceMonster user that's been with us since 2011. We did an interview with them to talk about how they use ServiceMonster and how it helped their business. So we did a write-up on that on the blog, so you can read it. If you're a reading person, you can watch it. If you're like me and you're a watching person. We also did a two-parter on door knocking. I wrote it, so I'm a little bit biased here, but I think door knocking is not something we talk about a lot in marketing, but especially if you're an owner op that does not have a schedule full of bookings, then it's a great way to spend your time getting out there and getting more bookings. And it's super low cost, super face-to-face with your clients. It's kind of unlike any other way of marketing. So we talk about that in two parts. It's a really big blog post. And then up on the blog today is a little listicle. If you like your 10 things to do X, we talk about easy ways to build a better relationship with your customers and really go that extra mile. So that's a great blog post as well. I think everyone here has done some of these things, but the blog post is just a good list to check yourself and make sure you really are taking every step you can to go that extra mile. So we'll keep turning out great blog content. We got a lot in the pipes. So if you like reading the blog, stay tuned. we got more good stuff coming.
And we'll share the link there, but how do our users just over time naturally just get to the blog? Where's that found, Asher?
That is servicemonster.com/blog. If you just go to servicemonster.com, that button is up in the navigation. I will put it in the chat of this live as well. And we tend to share new blog posts on our social media. So if you follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, we put them out there when they come out. And we usually include one in our monthly newsletter. If you aren't signed up for that, you can find a little sign up form in the footer of the website. So if you just scroll all the way down, there's a place to enter your email for that.
And have we talked to the SMUG community about the finalization of .com? We just let Asher slip that by.
No, we chatted about it a little bit on the last webinar.
Were we done with it? Was it already shipping by then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Never mind.
Although
it is still pretty exciting. So
there's some ongoing processes running in the background that we'll be putting out a blog post about. So if you find yourself changing domains, we've learned a lot of things along the way. We're currently in the process of a change of address with Google, which is just like doing it with the post office because it takes a really long time for them to get it right. So we've been waiting on that for almost 2 months. And once that is finally wrapped up, there will be a post on the blog about how you can do it too and what you can expect.
very good. You guys been pumping out the content. It's awesome. With that said, I think we can dive into some SMUG posts here, unless anyone has brought anything up. The first one came in from Jordan, and they asked, hey, is anyone currently running any integrations with Company Cam via Zapier, wanting to find a way for projects to be auto-created with order details and so forth? And I want to shine a light on this for 2 reasons. Like I said before, I always love when there's group collaboration, and a lot of you guys jumped in and kind of chatted about this. And I also wanted to mention that we have been in discussions with Company Cam. In fact, I have a follow-up meeting with an individual over there next week. It is one of our most heavily sought after integrations. If you guys aren't aware, on our marketplace, you can request integrations. It's a big way of it's a big way of letting us know where the priority should lay in terms of who we're looking for. The integration projects vary, right? Some integrations are more heavily development resources on our end. Some of them are, pretty hands off, right? And so that's the choice that kind of gets made into this. Another part of it is, we want to make sure that whoever we're working with and partnering with has a solid reputation. Company Cam follows that. And so that's a very positive thing. But I want to let you guys kind of know that when we make these choices, it's not a simple choice. It's not a, hey, we have, a value add and, we're aggressive sales and things like that. And that's just what it's going to be. No, there's a pretty heavy process that we have on our end to kind of make sure that anyone we allow is going to be beneficial. And we also listen to your guys' feedback, and that's a big part of it. And that's why I wanted to point this out. So if any of you guys are interested in Company Cam, if it's an integration that interests you, or if you didn't know that you could request integrations, you want to go do that, so by all means, feel free. Just wanted to shine a light on that. The next one comes from Mike. They asked, hey, I use Zapier. Could I do that to do a drip campaign? There's a schedule Zap that will allow it to run every so often. Could I pull a list of customers, target invoice date, and so on and so forth? And I had a pretty involved answer. And so it's part of the reason I wanted to mention this, because Zapier is a difficult thing to talk about in short bursts like we do sometimes on Ask SMUG. Joe and I have both talked about it in multiple events over the past few months. Zapier is very robust. In fact, there are changes coming down the pipeline that will even expand that in terms of what it can do on our end, for example. But as a whole, Zapier is basically limited to what connects with Zapier. That's really kind of the end of the answer. And then what you can do based on ServiceMonster's information is fairly straightforward. So there are both triggers and actions that you can have. So a trigger would be something that happens in ServiceMonster that then tells it to do something somewhere else. And an action would be the opposite, right? There's a trigger from somewhere else that needs to have an action within ServiceMonster. The triggers, the data that you get, can be based, it's all real time, right? So it's like, hey, an account got created, or hey, an order got invoiced, or hey, a payment was created, or so on and so forth. And so you can tell Zapier to do things with that data. So for example, if you had an order that was invoiced and then a payment that was created, you could have something in Zapier that basically says, hey, go store. You could do it as basic as, hey, shoot this off to a Google Sheets. And then you could have the date that that came in, and then you could have a follow-up that then bases off that through a secondary program. We have the capability of doing that currently with our export campaigns, which is part of the reason why we have that in the drip. So you can basically create these over time, then build this up, and then at certain intervals, you basically send that data off to a third party or so on and so forth. It's the same kind of idea. Mike himself was looking for something a little bit more drastic. In fact, he requested that the Zapier process gets tied into the drip campaign overall. I added that as a feature request. It's in the backlog. So I just kind of wanted to point a light that, hey, when you ask these things, we do take them into account. We put them in the backlog. That's not an easy fix. There are other changes we have for the drip campaign in mind already kind of on the roadmap. And so that's kind of where we're going to start.
I'm going to jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
The way that Aaron and I designed drip campaigns, you have those blocks are color coded, and they kind of represent the who, what, and how, if you will. Like, who are you going to attack? When are you going to attack them? And with what are you going to attack them? And right now, the whats are email. They are, what are they, Adam?
Call.
Their email. They're all the standard, right? Export, email, call,
in mail.
And mail. And so I had already conceptualized a bunch of other whats, and they shouldn't be too hard to add, right? But we have to align resources. There's lots of testing involved. We got to connect A to B. And then sometimes there's backlash, like I want an SMS what, i.e. a text what. So, you set up a drip campaign and you text. But I'm not going to let you guys do the same thing you're doing in my SMTP pipeline. And in fact, we're going to break that off into you have to do your own SMT pipeline for marketing in both SMS and SMTP down the road. So when we open up automated texting, you're going to be on your own pipeline, right? More CRM companies are offering nothing, no SMTP and no SMS, and saying do it yourself because bad actors. Like, we've got somebody that every once in a while shows up and does trial accounts and sends off a bunch of shit. And so we have to make change to prevent. This is why we can't have nice things, Adam. These people take advantage of this bullshit. And so we have people that gum up the pipeline, right? Everybody's sending along and it's stamping this, hey, it's from ABC, pipeline. And then somebody does something bad. And then ABC pipeline now has a bad reputation with the, powers that be as they shuffle texts and emails around. And so, right. And I've talked about this before, but you can see the waterfall, right? So we add new whats. I'm going to say, cool, let's add text. Let's add zaps. Let's add FMS. These are the three that I want to add. And so you can drop in and even say the what is a card, have ServiceMonster send them a card, right? So we've got this pipeline set up so that we can add these things. And then there's projects that fall out of that. So those are all things that are definitely lined up or taking very seriously. We want to give you guys, because texting in that vein is probably one of the most commonly asked for features for us. And we definitely want to get that in there.
Yeah, it's been the one it's been one of the
monthly
things
view, monthly view,
right?
For everybody yelling at their phone right now, we hear you. It's monthly view. I get it.
Yeah.
But then it's texting.
Yeah. It's
automated texting.
It's coming. It's going to be in levels, but it's coming. Yeah. Thanks for jumping in, Joe, because that's it's a very interesting point. But I mostly just wanted to talk about and showcase, like, hey, this gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. Zapier allows you to do a lot of things. And his end goal could be accomplished, kind of showed how, and then there are changes coming in the future. So this really breaks it down. I want you guys to feel like when you do request features that they're not just shouting into the void, this is an opportunity for us to talk about them. So hope that you guys find it useful. If not, then we can find other things to talk about. Speaking of, another feature request came in. And again, I just want to point out that when these come in, there are a couple of, oftentimes when things get asked, they can be really, really broad. And it's just sort of like, hey, I need this one thing. I don't even mention, I don't contextualize or so forth. And so if you ever see me kind of asking for more clarification, I promise it's not just because I ate a bunch of stupid for breakfast that morning. It's really just sort of, I really want to understand the why that you're asking. That's the really big part that I care about when you guys are asking for a specific feature request, is sort of the why. Because if I can really figure out what the core issue is, we might have other ways of implementing the how. And it doesn't necessarily mean that one way is necessarily right or wrong. It sort of just allows us to see a bigger picture, right? And sort of try to figure out what the best implementation is, because this stuff, Joe says it all the time, it's extremely complex. The software itself is massive. And so there are a lot of other things you have to take into account other than just adding more on top, right, to make sure that's running efficiently. So this is kind of one of the things I just want to point out.
I'm just gonna say for the joke that Twitter doesn't have an edit button. just gonna throw that out there.
Oh my goodness. Of course, the Twitter stuff. Anyways, Josh asked about a feature request talking about the recurring job reminders. We added it to the list. I'm gathering some more feedback on it. That's just kind of how that's going. But again, just want to take that time, shine a light, keep requesting stuff, guys. It's great. But I really want to try to get discussions, and I want to really kind of dig out the why. And so I appreciate you guys taking that time. So another one came in from Josh. He was having issues with his logo on the estimate approval form. And I wanted to just point this one out because this is actually something that is tied to the 668 release that I mentioned earlier. We're going through planned improvements to the estimate approval process. And the big one is sort of fixing some of these, giving you guys some options on the config. It's not all going to come out at once. We're mostly just trying to get some of the quick and easy and important ones out quickly. And some of them will be kind of tagged in to be a little bit further down the roadmap. But that's coming out. So that's kind of what I wanted to point that out. So thanks, Josh. And lastly, there was a question about running. Hey, I know you can run a campaign by the last invoice date. I wanted to know if ServiceMonster has the capability of running a campaign or report on the last date of a specific service. And so I had kind of a lengthy reply. We don't have a way to look at a specific line item when you're pulling in. We won't go into that. Basically, it's very difficult to pull data on that level when you're running these campaigns because it has to cross multiple tables of data that are massive. Joe, just how big is the order table? Just like on a scale that might make sense. Like just how big is the orders table? It's massive.
You mean how many orders?
How many records? Like just I don't know.
That question doesn't even make sense because we have multiple databases.
Right.
In those multiple databases, we have multiple instances. Within those multiple instances, we have multiple tenants. We recognize those tenants as subscriptions or individual companies. And so I can, if you clump, I mean, we process 1.2 million jobs a year, right? That represents $500 million in revenue. And we archived an audit table and we just stashed, I don't know, 40% of the records away, and we moved 100 million records. So I don't know. Is that like what you're looking for?
It was
you want me to make it sound big, right?
It is an unfair question, but yeah, it's mostly just saying that when you're dealing, especially with appointments and orders,
and we're a 20-year-old company,
right? When you're dealing with that much data, you're dealing with what they call joins between the tables to sort of run these calculations, and it can really lengthen really quickly the amount of time to query that data if you guys are filtering out for a specific item. So I went way too in depth there. I appreciate you, Joe, for being game.
Yeah, let me short circuit this. The answer is yes. You just do it through groups.
Yep, that's the answer I was getting to. I'm gonna show you guys how to do that if you're not aware. So we can finish it off with a nice little screen share here and call it a day. Is if you guys aren't aware, if you go into your products and services, If I just hop into a service here, this area rug cleaning, there's a group section. And this group section, I have just some random defaults in here that I've made in my test company. But you guys will have a few defaults in yours. You can create groups. You can group them however you wish. These groups can then be targeted by a campaign. So if I go into a campaign and I go into, let's go to this random email campaign here, I can add a filter. I know I'm going quickly, guys. I apologize. I'll slow down here. I can add a filter down here at the bottom, and I can run that filter based off not the invoice date, but if I come down further, there's a section here for services. And you can see all of those group items that I mentioned before are listed here. So I can look at the last time the irrigation service or the pressure wash or the rug service.
Yeah, the perfect scenario for most of our customers is you do a carpet cleaning for them, and 3 months later you hit them up with a tile and grout ad. Or you take your tile and grout users and you hit them up a year later for a touch up or a protectant.
Yep.
Right. So you can focus your marketing to those customers who have not yet had those types of services or who have had those types of services. And you know that if they've had service A, they're likely to get service B, because I will say it a million times. The number one thing you guys suck at is keeping your client retention. This is the number one reason why we built ServiceMonster, help you with client retention. The number two things that you're not so great at when it comes to marketing is letting your clients know what products and services you offer. So you have to, I probably should turn my camera on, but Justin will get mad at me. You have to let them know what products and services you offer. And so many times you will lose a client because A, they don't remember you, or B, let's say you're doing a good job staying in front of them so you're top of mind. So when they need you, they know who to call. They won't know you don't do those other services. And they'll let their fingers wander and they'll ask Betty down the street and they'll head up their Facebook group and it'll say, oh, Bob does carpet and tile. Oh, but I do tile too. And you just lost that customer and you have no idea, because they're going to be better at keeping them than you and letting them know about all the different products and services they offer. So yeah, it's the non-sell sell, right? I don't want to sell them, but so this allows you to segment your clients and really hit them with direct messaging. Let's say that somebody really likes their tile and marble and all that stuff cleaned on the regular. Now you can really carve out specific campaigns, hit them up, and even give them offers towards the services you know they're going to like anyways. And then cross-selling too, understanding like Mrs. Jones likely to buy carpet cleaning. She has tile in her home because, you know, I record the stuff in my database, right? And then and then I know that I can hit her up for tile later. So
yeah, the one that I used to do all the time in onboarding was when users had specific things tied to pet, like if there's a urine treatment or something like that.
Yep.
They would just have that grouped, and then they would have a completely different campaign that be targeted that, and then it would be running more often because pet owners, at least the ones who want to have a clean house, are likely cleaning their carpets more often. So yep, absolutely. It's available. Use that group feature if you guys weren't already. We have a help article. I will try to help add that to the link when we repost this, just so you guys have that. But you can go search on our help site otherwise. And I think that's all I got for you, Joe.
Awesome. Very good. All right. Thank you, everybody. 44 minutes. Not too bad. We'll try to tighten that up in the future. Thank you for your attention. If you need any help, feel free to give us a ring, shoot us an email. And until next time. I'm just kidding. Where's that button? Bye.